Well, welcome to Echoes from the Satellite. I'm Karen, your host, and it's my pleasure today to have my good friend Larry with me. Larry is a longtime friend and also one of the co-hosts of Planet 8 podcast. How are you doing, Larry?
I am doing very well, Walker. Thank you for having me up in the satellite today.
Well, I couldn't have a better first guest in the satellite, so thanks for coming aboard. And I'm very excited because, you and I have been friends for, oh, many, many years now,
Decades. Uh,
decades.
since the
And
80s, right? So,
oh, yeah. So it's been over 3 decades and a lot of fun. But we've always been united in our love of many, many things, but especially Star Trek.
yes.
And I know there's a lot of things we've discussed about Star Trek. But we are also united in our love of these large art books for movies. And there's a lot of different movies we both bought the art books from, but we were discussing the other day, like, oh, what could we do on the show? And this Star Trek the Motion Picture art book came up. And I think you were the first to get this. I think you're the one who said, "Oh, have you seen this?" And you got it. And then I was like, "Oh, I have to get it."
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. Definitely a coffee table format. It's not the biggest. I mean, there have been Planet of the Apes books and other genres where or films where it's much larger, but this is manageable and just chocked full of information on the motion picture, all aspects of production and filming, and so I'm thrilled to be on this episode with you to talk about the book.
And yeah, we should say that we know a lot of people are not fans of Star Trek the Motion Picture, but we are. We both really like this film. Um, I know, we were both fans who bridged that gap between at least when Star Trek was in syndication, the original series was in syndication, and then there was really nothing, nothing new
Right.
until Star Trek the Motion Picture came out.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally you'd get an article in Starlog or, a fanzine or something like that, but there was very little, official or canon coming out
Right.
after the original series and the animated series. And then when we got word, through those fanzines and magazines that they're working on a movie version of
Mhm.
Star Trek, we just about lost it.
And there was so much back and forth for a while. It was going to be, uh, a TV series. I know there's all the phase two stuff you can read about what the TV series was going to be, and
Right.
and then there was going to be a different movie, and there was so many different versions of this, and then we got the film, and the film really, I think, people dismiss it and have a lot of negative things to say about it, but it's slow and all this other stuff. But really, if you watch it, it has the spirit of Star Trek in it. I mean, the characters are all coming from being separated for a very long time and coming back together, and so we see them in uh, ways we've never seen them before. And I think that's what's kind of jarring to a lot of people.
Absolutely. And, it had been better part of a decade or more since we saw, the actors had done other things, on television and film, but there was just so much pressure on this movie.
Mhm.
For a while, they were developing both projects in tandem, the TV show Phase Two and the motion picture. And they're like, well, which way is this going? And Roddenberry, God bless him, he's involved in both. He's going to be part of his baby, by hook or by crook. And they had trouble getting Nimoy, and they actually
Right.
developed another Vulcan character, Zahn, in case they didn't get Nimoy back. Um, the actors, even though it had been 10 or, however many years, I'd read somewhere that when they filmed them, they put on all this makeup and the lighting had to be just so because they didn't want them to look aged.
Hmm.
They wanted the Enterprise to be refitted, and they all went back and started, another 5-year mission or whatever. So, a lot of pressure was put on this. And if you watch the original series, there's episodes that have a lot of action. There's episodes that are very thought-provoking. They have bottle episodes where it takes place all on the ship. There are episodes with guests,
Hmm.
without guests, and the motion picture is just one of those stories. It had Klingons, but it didn't have like Klingons throughout the whole film. And not to make excuses because it's a beautiful film, but maybe V'ger wasn't as well developed and filmed back in 1979 as they envisioned. This book is a treasure in that there's all these illustrations and
Yes.
ideas and concepts, right, Walker, of what
Hmm.
V'ger
I,
was.
I yeah, exactly. There's some we'll get to it in the book, but um, I think the book and then the director's cut they made of the motion picture really help you understand what V'ger was.
Right.
Um, so yeah, there were things. I mean, it's a beautiful film, and it was definitely a big budget film. The way it was made, the Enterprise to me has never looked more beautiful than in the motion picture. Um, but they had a lot of problems, like you said, with the first effects house that they went to. Uh, Basically couldn't produce. They couldn't produce the effects they needed, so they were under the gun trying to get this thing out the door. But I think uh, the final product, yeah, there's issues, but I think ultimately, without that film, we wouldn't have Star Trek today. I don't think
I
it would have
agree.
continued on. So
Yeah. It would have been the original series, and I think that would have been it. I don't think there would have been a next gen Deep Space Nine. I don't think J.J. Abrams would have had his go
that
at
might not have been so bad, but
oh well. But yeah, yeah.
well, should we take a look at this wonderful Star Trek, the motion picture book?
Yes.
All right.
Inside the Art and Visual Effects. And Jeff Bond, he's done several books that have just been fantastic and so chock full of information. Gene Kozicki,
Kozicki, I think.
yeah, I
Yeah.
believe, also worked on this book. And like I said, it's a treasure. I love this book. So
All right. We
let's take
will
a look.
dive in just a second here. All right. So here's the cover of the book, and it's got that beautiful image from the posters or the movie poster at the time.
Hmm.
And you're gonna see me moving this thing around, guys. It's just this is not a professional operation here. So we do have some pages marked that we want to share. So the first thing I wanted to look at was this design of the ship when they were talking about making Planet of the Titans when Phil Kaufman was on as director. And the one thing I did not like this design, but it struck me, Larry, that this looks a lot like the Discovery. Um, Maybe if
Absolutely.
you move the nacelles back a little bit. So
There's a bit of the Enterprise, Picard's Enterprise, I think, and especially the secondary hull.
that's
They didn't
true.
quite pancake it, but there was this,
Kind of
kind of,
flattening.
yeah, and the
Well,
nacelles were shoved back also.
yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. I didn't think about that, but now that you say it, I totally
But
see it.
there's elements of discovery in there as well, and it's kind of I like to think that those people that were in production or designing the ship kind of looked back at what was conceptualized before, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
and then just kind of added to that.
Right. Never throw away a design or an idea.
Right.
You see that a lot with Lucas as well. And then this
Mm,
uh, this shot of the V'ger model, this is one of the few times that I actually understood what V'ger that it really was a spaceship,
right.
because in the film, the original version, it was like a big cloud and it was sort of hard to see. Now, when they made the director's edition, you really could see more of the ship.
Right. In the original, film, they would talk about moving from one chamber to another chamber, which they kept, in the Blu-ray and the director's cut and stuff. But you never understood the scope or the size, um,
Right.
other than the aperture, and the Enterprise was juxtaposed to the aperture. But
Mm-hmm.
that is beautiful right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can really see like, oh, it had this sort of long cylindrical shape with, sort of these little appendages and things coming
And
off of
not
it.
to geek out, but if you think about, what kind of power V'ger would generate, it had to be a huge ship, right? It
Yeah,
had to have that capacity to generate and to store all that knowledge from all those years and all those civilizations and so on and so forth.
right. And that it kind of gets it across and then you realize how small the Enterprise is
Right.
compared to that. So I think, let's see, what is our next stop on this adventure? Oh, here we go.
Hmm.
Let's see. Ah, looking at the warp core. Now, this is pretty commonplace since, this film, since Next Gen, we've had these long warp cores in Starfleet vehicles, but this was the first time we saw this. We didn't see this in the television series.
Right. The television series, we'd see the engine room, and they had that long chamber
Right.
in the engine room, and that was horizontal. They set this up to be vertical. And what I thought was interesting, not to get too far off topic, is when we get to Wrath of Khan, it's horizontal again.
That's true. There's two versions, right? There's sort
Yeah.
of um, and I think, well, actually on the next page there's an illustration.
But wait, there's
But
more.
wait, there's more. So it seems like there's both the vertical warp core, and then there's the sort of horizontal that
That
goes
it
to the
feeds the
nacelles.
power to the pylons, right?
Yeah. Although I never understood how the warp core goes through the torpedo bay, but maybe that's that's a question for some sort of
Now I'll
technical
clue you,
expert.
I'll clue you viewers in that we won't discuss it during the podcast today, but Karen and I will most definitely be looking at this in more detail offline later to discuss.
I think another thing that was interesting was the lighting. Now, I don't think they discuss it in here, but there's a great book, and I've got it. And I know you've got it too. I hope you still have it after the fire.
Oh,
Return to
yes.
Tomorrow.
Ah, that is a beautiful book as well.
Yes. We picked this up when we went to a Monster Palooza in
Yeah.
Burbank, California. And this was at the old Creature Features store.
Hmm.
And this book is really, if you really like the motion picture, you have to get this book because it's sort of an oral history of Star Trek the Motion Picture. And in here they talked about how they put all of these lamps in the warp core and I don't know, they somehow refracted the light and everything. And I don't know, it was absolutely nuts how they did that.
I love that so much thought goes into the design that you may not necessarily see in the film.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah, there's so many details and things. And speaking of which, yeah, the phasers, we hardly saw these
Hmm.
in the film, but uh, you get these close-up shots in the book here where you can actually see the buttons on the phasers. And then what were these? These were the communicators that they
Communicators,
wore on their wrists,
wrist,
which
right?
we never saw again.
Nope.
After this, it was one and done for these communicators. And then we also can't neglect the tricorders, which I think were kind of bland looking. I don't know, not too exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. It was their idea of the future in 1978, when
Yeah,
they were doing this. It was released in 79, but it
but
was all
yeah.
about lights and buttons.
And here is a really nice shot. I knew you pointed this out earlier.
Yeah, this is one of the shots I thought because I love we all I'm sure love the introduction or reintroduction to the Enterprise after the retrofit. And the music is beautiful, the visuals are beautiful, and it's so funny that practical effects are used. And here's a great example. These are auto inspection mirrors, and they just reflect the light to shine up on the model, and it's so effective.
Isn't it amazing? You can go back and you can watch the film and yeah, you totally buy that it's a
Right.
starship. And I think there is something to be said for um, models because they're physical, they have weight and mass, and your brain feels that.
I was going to say the same thing. Your brain recognizes that. As an aside, if you look on the left of the page there, those three shots of people in and around the Enterprise as it sits in dry dock. How many people were actually there when this was filmed or when they were putting it together? How fortunate are we to have this book, to look at this and be, a small part of or experience in picture what they experienced live,
Hmm.
and there's multiple pictures in this book. We're just covering a handful today, um, that give us that insight, which I just thoroughly love.
Oh yeah. I know if there's one thing I have a little complaint about is that I wish there were more pictures of them building the Enterprise. There's a handful of pictures,
Right,
but it's mostly already assembled, and I kind of
right.
wish there were more pictures of it
And,
being
and and I
put
wish they were
together.
larger pictures. If they could have gave
Right.
another 30 pages, I wouldn't have argued.
And we have some more V'ger pictures. And this
Mm.
I thought was a really nice drawing of, the V'ger from a side view. I think this is another Sid Mead drawing.
I'll say there's a company called Eagle Moss that did a bunch of Star Trek ships from all the series, and they started doing some movie ships, and that picture of V'ger is one of the ships that they came out with. So if you guys are ever able to look for Eagle Moss V'ger, I'm not sure what it costs now, but it's a beautiful ship. I have it in my collection.
Oh, I'm envious. I would have loved to have gotten a hold of that one. Let's have a, let's see what we got marked over here. Ah, okay. Now, the
Mm,
memory wall segment.
yeah,
They, I think probably many people who know about Star Trek know about this segment in the film, which was going to be the segment that we eventually see where Spock goes out inside of V'ger and he encounters the giant image of Ilea and gets all this information from V'ger. Originally, they had a segment with Kirk and Spock where they go out and explore inside V'ger and they come across what's essentially like its memory banks, and they called it the memory wall. sequence, but they just couldn't get the effects to come together. But um, yeah, this is, as far as I know, the best resource I've seen for photographs from that deleted sequence.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's really interesting. It's a good what if, um, because what would that sequence have been like if they could have filmed it, if they could have put it in the film. Um, you can see in one picture here, Kirk is surrounded by these sort of looks like pieces of a mirror, but those are supposed to be almost like antibodies that attack him to prevent him from doing any damage to V'ger. And I don't know, it might have been a really cool sequence if they could have pulled it off, but we will never know. This is probably as close as we will ever get to knowing what that sequence might have been like.
And it's funny how, sometimes, this didn't work out. I think and I don't know, there's no footage of this, but it's very effective Spock doing the mind meld with V'ger,
Yes.
and they were forced to do that because this didn't work. So,
And it's probably a happy accident because I think that sequence is really effective.
right.
But it's kind of cool that we get
That
to
is.
look at it.
And again, how many people were actually there experiencing that? And how many years has this picture existed but just hasn't been circulated? We're just so fortunate to be a part of this, or
Mhm.
to see a part of it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting in the book to see, how they filmed a lot of things as well. This was a lot of wire work, and they had, as you can see, they had the actors on cranes, and there's a lot of that kind of behind the scenes
Right.
stuff that goes on in the book. All right. Well, I'm going to move on to the next section. Um, I wanted to just show, of course, I lost a page now,
Oh no.
this professional operation. Now, here it is. I thought this was really interesting,
That's
more,
a good one.
looking at um, towards the end of the film when the cast goes out onto the top of the Enterprise, the saucer section, and they walk out to V'ger. Now we know there's all these, little um, I don't know what you would call them, like little sort of
Bricks,
they're
kind of stepping
what's
stones. I don't know.
yeah, stepping stones. At one point, they had conceptualized these, um, I don't know, sort of coils or whatever that I guess were supposed to look somewhat like maybe the nervous system or the brain. So
Hmm.
this is a drawing of that. And then on the other side, we get what looks a little bit more like what we saw in the final film. Um, but it's just interesting to me seeing like how many different routes do they go down before they get to what they're really looking for.
Right.
You think about these films and how many different things do they try, and then they say, "Oh, yeah, that's what we're trying to do."
Right.
Now, the Klingon sequence in the film, which is what we see first, was actually filmed last, and we get a section of that at the end of the book, since that's what was produced last. And I thought it was interesting. They said that they didn't have any existing Klingon models to work with. They said that there were rumors that there's a Klingon model in the Smithsonian, but they said no, they didn't work from that. And besides, it would have been too small. It was only 2 feet long, so they had to build a completely new Klingon battle cruiser. And it's really interesting to see how they worked on that, how they because it was a film, they had to put so much more detail
Right.
into the model.
It's a
And
beauty.
you can see that going on there. this was a photograph of the bridge part of the ship, and then I think it was again Mike Miner who made drawings on the photograph indicating all the detail that he wanted put the into that part of the model. So again, just understanding all the work, like you said, Larry, there's a lot of things we don't see or we don't see much of, but these people are artisans and they really
Right.
put so much effort into realizing this universe.
Yeah. Not only did it have to look cool, but I love how they explain why there's, this in that corner and why there's that on the primary hull and how that, juxtaposition to the weapons array.
Hmm.
All this stuff that they put into it that will never, unless you buy like a book or something that talks about it, we'll never really appreciate or notice.
Right. It had to make sense to them, right? Just
Hmm.
like with Matt Jeffries on the
No,
original Star Trek, right? He,
right.
well, the nacelles have to go here and, you have to be able to vent, whatever here and you can't have this too close to this. And, they really were thoughtful in what
There is a,
they were doing.
oh, absolutely. Matt Jeffries is just amazing. There's a book that I started reading about the original series and how NASA was involved in designing the Enterprise and I'm so sorry I can't remember the name of the book. Let's move on though and I'll figure out and give it to you before we end.
I pulled this picture out to look at because I had never seen it before.
Oh,
This was
oh
the
yeah,
Klingon bridge,
right.
and they had it, up on a platform here. I am not sure if that was, I was looking in the text and I couldn't find the explanation. I don't know if that was so they could move it, kind of, shake it around. But I thought that was kind of interesting that they had it up like that. And of course, they had the side open so they could film. And then they had other sections back here, which presumably they could move around. But that was also the first time we had ever seen inside of a Klingon ship, I believe. We'd seen the insides of a Romulan ship, which at that time, I think, so we saw in the Balance of Terror, we saw inside a
Right.
Romulan ship, but then in the Enterprise incident in the third season, inside the Romulan ship would have been inside a Klingon ship because they were using Klingon ships because
Right.
the Romulan model was destroyed. But anyway, yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. That was another thing when we saw the film. It was like, oh, Klingon Bridge, and it was dark and kind of smoky and grimy. It was very different than a Federation ship.
Well, and we should say that the Klingons also looked dark and grimy and
Well, that's true.
created a lot of
Wow.
you know,
Right.
controversy among fans to this day.
I think the makeup is a little further back. Well, and that's it's interesting, isn't it? Because I know when Discovery came out, and I will say I also did not like the look of the Discovery Klingons, but when these guys came out with the ridge on their heads, there were some people who were like, "What?"
Yeah.
Um, in reading here about that, there's some speculation that some of the people who worked on the motion picture may have also worked on some of Roddenberry's other stuff, like Fred Phillips, I guess, would have been the main one. Um, and when he did, uh, Roddenberry put together, several TV pilots in the 70s, which were unsuccessful, like Planet Earth. And I guess in Planet Earth, there were some bad guys. I know I've seen it, but I don't remember. But there were some bad guys who I think were mutants called the Krieg. And I guess they had a spine up over their heads. So there's speculation that maybe, oh, well, we did this before, we'll do it again. Um, who knows? I mean, the Klingons weren't much to look at in the original series. So in some ways, making them more alien, I think, was a welcome change. They had the budget to do it in the film. Uh, I know when I saw it, I actually liked it. I wasn't bent out of shape over it. Maybe I've only become rigid and inflexible in my old age. But yes.
There's all this speculation in fandom. Why did we have subtitles for the Klingons talking on the Klingon bridge in the motion picture, and we never had subtitles in the motion picture? And it was a forum or something said, well, that's because they didn't need a universal translator on the bridge. It was all Klingons talking to each other, and we were just kind of peeking in. And in the original series, everybody had a universal translator, so we understood everybody. And I'm like, oh my God.
People will go to a lot of lengths to
Oh yes.
explain things. And of course, at the end of the book, this
Dun, 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 dun,
wonderful beauty
dun.
shot of the Enterprise. The pearlescent paint job, I think, is just what really sells it for me.
Yeah.
The ship just glows. It's just beautiful.
When the model came out for the motion picture, my friend James picked it up. It was put up by Matchbox, and it didn't have any of the Aztec pattern. It
Mm.
was after I think the Wrath of Khan it came out, and then there were like naval blue gray and duck blue and all these different colors you could paint, and it would like take months. But it is a beautiful rendering of the ship. Like Karen had said, I agree. I think that's my favorite version of the Enterprise. Um, it's just so beautiful. And before
Yeah.
I forget, the book I was mentioning, Inspired Enterprise, How NASA, the Smithsonian, and the aerospace community helped launch Star Trek.
Ah,
Um,
that's interesting. I don't think I've seen that.
I'll send you the link maybe in a couple of months.
We can talk about that one.
But that was a fun little run through the book. God knows it would be months if we did the whole thing, right, page by page. And
Oh, it's a just completely enthralling book. So we just gave everybody a little taste today of that book. But
just a
yeah,
wee bit.
if you're a Star Trek fan, if you like the motion picture, if you love the motion picture like we do, I think it's a must-have book. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and not just, the pictures are wonderful, but there's so much information too about, how things were done, why they were done, sort of those, aborted efforts and things like that. So um, it's a must-have for
I
sure.
agree. A lot of love went into putting this book together, and a lot of love went into putting the motion picture together, as originally released, and also the souped up director's cut. There's all
Yeah,
I didn't bring it up, but there's all these drawings of the planet Vulcan, and we only see Spock for
right.
a very short time, and I'm happy that they utilized some of those designs when they kind of upgraded. I don't know if that's the word for the original series when he goes in to do his Ponfar. And we get to see a little bit more of Vulcan. I'm sure they
Yeah.
used it in other series as well,
I
probably,
think
but
that's one of the best things about the director's cut to me was how they fixed the Vulcan scenes because clearly like the matte paintings they had in there were not a great match for what was going on in the live action. Like at one point, I you know Spock's walking around, and those were the scenes I think they filmed in like Yosemite.
oh,
And then
right.
he looks up and the sun is in his face, and then they show the sky and it's like pitch black. It's like, what's going on? So they really changed that and made it look a lot better. I mean, it just really looks fantastic with the that director's cut. So that's um, another must have, I think, for anybody who's a Trek fan.
Absolutely. Well, this was enjoyable.
I'm glad it was enjoyable for you. I hope the viewers enjoyed it as well. And yeah, maybe we'll continue with some more Star Trek. Or I know we both have a number of these large uh, art books that we can ramble through. So
Absolutely.
yes, we'll definitely have to do it again, my friend. Well, thank you so much for being on. And of course, if you want to see more of Larry, you can tune into the Planet 8 podcast, where he is our mission commander and leads us through many, many adventures in our episodes.
Why, thank you, Karen. Walker, this was just delightful, and I can't wait to come back.
I'll be happy to have you back. And so, everybody, stay safe, stay strong, and be happy to see you again in our next episode. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.